The moving truck pulled away just as the sun dipped behind the tall pines surrounding Oak Hill Preserve. Jacob let out a long breath and leaned against the porch railing, watching the golden hue bathe the neatly trimmed lawns. It was quiet, almost too quiet. "This place is a little Stepford, huh?" Marissa said behind him, arms crossed, already eyeing the row of matching mailboxes like a detective spotting something out of place. "Quiet's good. You said you wanted peace," Jacob replied, tugging a folded brochure from his pocket. It had promised luxury living, tight-knit community, and strict aesthetic standards. They had interpreted that as no parties, no drama, no nonsense. They had no idea. As they unpacked into the evening, a woman stood across the street, perfectly still, watching. Blonde bob, tennis skirt, clipboard in hand, not a neighborly smile, not even a wave. Just watching. "Who's that?" Marissa asked from behind a stack of boxes. Jacob glanced up again. The woman was gone. The next morning, a bright yellow flyer was stuck to their door. Notice of violation. Recycling bin. Exceeded time limit. Section 14B. The truck had come. At 6:30 a.m. Jacob had wheeled it back in by 7:10. "You're kidding," Marissa muttered, flipping it over. Hand signed. C. Farnsworth, HOA Enforcement Committee. They hadn't even unpacked their dishes. Over the next week, the warnings piled up. Grass height was non-conforming by 3/4 of an inch. A wind chime on their back patio was labeled a sound disturbance. Even their welcome mat was declared non-neutral in color. "Neutral?" Jacob said aloud, holding it up. "It's beige." With cursive, Marissa replied. "Says home. Probably offensive to someone who hates nouns." She was trying to laugh. But Jacob saw the stress creeping in. Every time they left the house, Cheryl Farnsworth, the woman from across the street, was outside. Clipping bushes that didn't need clipping, picking up invisible debris from the sidewalk, talking to no one, but always looking. Always looking. Then came the email. It arrived at 1:13 a.m. A full page detailing how Jacob's porch light spilled excessive lumens onto Cheryl's lawn and created unsafe nighttime glare. Attached were photos. Photos of their house, taken at night, from across the street. "She's watching us," Marissa whispered, reading the email twice. "She's actually out there at night taking pictures." Jacob didn't respond. He was already in the garage pulling out the ladder. By sunrise, a small camera was mounted under their eaves, disguised near the porch light Cheryl hated so much. It recorded motion, audio, everything. By noon, Cheryl was back. She paced across the sidewalk in her usual pattern. 3 steps forward, turn, glance, scribble. She muttered to herself, pointing at their rose bush. Then she pulled out her phone and took a picture of Jacob unloading bags of soil. A text message immediately followed, likely to someone on the HOA board, possibly to herself. Jacob turned around just as she took the photo. "Need something?" he called, loud enough for it to carry. Cheryl didn't blink. "You're being monitored. For compliance." With that, she walked off, her clipboard held like a weapon. Marissa stood behind Jacob, arms folded, face pale. This was supposed to be a quiet neighborhood. Jacob narrowed his eyes, watching Cheryl vanish into her immaculate 2-story. "It is quiet," he muttered. "Too quiet. And she wants to be the only one making noise." He didn't know it. Yet. But Cheryl had already planned her next move, a 911 call that would flip their world upside down. Jacob wasn't easily rattled. Years of managing chaotic commercial builds and dealing with shady contractors had trained him to keep a level head. But something about Cheryl Farnsworth was different. Her behavior wasn't just controlling. It felt coordinated, as if she was trying to provoke them into crossing a line. That night, Marissa sat at the kitchen island with her laptop open, searching the Oak Hill HOA website. She didn't say much, but Jacob could see the lines forming between her eyebrows. She was the one who usually trusted first, asked questions later, but now her silence said everything. "Find anything?" he asked. "There's no official title listed for her. No contact email, no office hours, just her name on everything." She turned the screen to him. "President of the board, chair of compliance, neighborhood safety liaison. She even runs the landscaping committee." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "And judge, jury, and executioner." Marissa looked over the laptop screen, her voice dropping. "She's not just watching us, Jacob. She's running the whole damn neighborhood." That night, as they got ready for bed, Marissa froze near the window. "What is that?" Jacob walked over and followed her gaze. Across the street, just under Cheryl's gutter, a tiny green light blinked like a heartbeat, then blinked again. Faint, but steady. "Security cam," he muttered. "Facing our house." The next morning, Jacob crossed the street before work and knocked on Cheryl's door. No answer. But the camera turned slightly, just enough to track him. He flipped it off. That night, a new violation appeared taped to their door. Threatening. Behavior, verbal and gestural. It included the exact time he'd walked across the street. "She's watching the footage in real time," Marissa said. "She has a feed." Jacob didn't argue. Instead, he ordered 2 more outdoor security cams, with cloud storage, infrared, and motion alerts. By Friday, the house was wired like a military checkpoint. Front porch, driveway, side gate. All recording. That's when things got worse. Saturday. Morning. Jacob opened the side gate to take out the trash and nearly stepped on a Ziploc bag sitting neatly on the top step. Inside were clipped pieces of paper, HOA violation printouts, all from the past week. Someone had highlighted the word non-compliant in red marker and circled it over and over. "Did you put this here?" he asked Marissa. She shook her head. "I just opened the garage. I didn't see anything." He looked up at the eaves of the garage. Something metallic caught the sun. Another camera. "Not ours," Jacob said, pulling out his phone and switching to the porch cam. He scrolled through the motion feed, searching timestamp by timestamp. Then he stopped. At 3:21 a.m., a hooded figure appeared in frame. No lights, no car, just walking down the sidewalk. The figure turned, slipped between the hedge and the fence, and crouched by their garage for 47 seconds. Then it stood up and walked off. The hood slipped back for half a second, enough to catch a glimpse. Cheryl, clear as day. Marissa leaned in closer, her voice tight. "She's not just watching us, she's trespassing." "I'm calling the HOA board," Jacob said. "I already did," Marissa replied. "They never called back." He stared at the paused frame of Cheryl disappearing into the shadows. It was a scene out of a horror film, in their supposedly safe suburban paradise. Jacob knew this was no longer about lawn rules or garbage bins. This was a game of power, and Cheryl had been playing it for far longer than they realized. What he didn't know was that Cheryl was about to make her boldest move yet, a 911 call designed to break them. But she had no idea who'd be on the other end of the line. Jacob thought he knew everything about Marissa, his partner, his best friend, the woman who kept his feet on the ground. But lately she had become quieter, distracted, her laughter rare and clipped. She buried herself in work, locking herself in the study for hours, her laptop screen glowing late into the night. One evening, Jacob caught her staring at a live map on her computer, flashing red dots scattered across their county. "What are you doing?" he asked gently. Marissa blinked, almost startled, then closed the browser quickly. "Just some research," she said, forcing a smile. But Jacob was persistent. "What kind of research?" She hesitated, then sighed. "It's complicated. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to worry, but I started working again, part-time." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "Working? Since when?" "For The county, she said. I'm a 911 dispatcher. Jacob stared. You never said. I didn't want to. It's stressful, and I didn't want it to take over our lives again. You know how intense it gets, but lately I couldn't stay away, especially with everything happening here. Jacob nodded slowly. The stress in her eyes suddenly made sense. The late nights, the unreadable texts, the quiet moments when she seemed miles away. Marissa's fingers trembled as she opened a file on her screen. A redacted report from 3 years ago titled, Missing Person, Oak Hill Preserve. A woman named Denise Harper, last seen after a confrontation with the HOA over property violations. The case went cold. Marissa's voice dropped. Cheryl was mentioned in the report. Indirectly, but enough to raise questions. Jacob frowned. What does that mean? That she's been involved in this longer than anyone knows, and I think she's been covering her tracks. Or worse. Over the next few days, Marissa kept her secret job tightly under wraps. By day, she played the part of the worried wife. By night, she monitored calls, listened to complaints, and scoured 911 recordings from their neighborhood. One night, as the clock ticked past midnight, her headset buzzed. A call came in from Oak Hill Preserve. The voice on the other end was trembling. They're watching me, the caller whispered. HOA people. They don't want me here. Marissa's fingers flew over her keyboard, typing notes, tracing the caller's location. It was a small, nondescript house 2 streets over. Before she could dispatch officers, the line went dead. Her stomach churned. That same night, Jacob found a folded note taped to their front door. It read simply, You're next. Stop digging. They looked at each other, the threat clear as day. Jacob clenched his jaw. This isn't just about bushes and lights anymore. Cheryl's playing a deeper game. Marissa nodded, her eyes steely. I'm going to find out everything she's hiding, even if it means risking my job. The couple was united but on edge, and neither knew that Cheryl was already watching their every move, plotting the perfect moment to strike back. The days after the note felt like walking on a razor's edge. Jacob and Marissa moved with a heightened awareness. Every sound, outside their home amplified by nerves. The peaceful facade of Oak Hill Preserve was cracking, revealing something darker beneath. One evening, Jacob was in the garage, tinkering with the security cameras, when he noticed something unusual on the screen. The feed showed their front, yard bathed in the orange glow of street lamps. But there, crouched by the rose bushes, was a shadowy figure. It moved deliberately, hands touching the plants as if searching for something. Jacob zoomed in, and his heart sank. The figure's silhouette was unmistakable. Cheryl Farnsworth. He grabbed his phone to call Marissa, but she was already on her way home. When she arrived, Jacob showed her the footage. Marissa's face hardened. This is trespassing. They debated calling the police, but worried Cheryl's reputation as HOA president might make their complaint easy to dismiss. Instead, they decided to confront her together, to demand answers. The next morning, as Cheryl stepped out for her daily rounds of neighborhood patrol, Jacob and Marissa caught her by the mailbox. Cheryl, Jacob started calmly, we saw you in our yard last night. What were you doing? Cheryl's eyes flashed coldly. Maintaining standards, she said curtly. Something you clearly don't understand. Marissa stepped forward. We're neighbors. You can't just enter someone's property without permission. Cheryl scoffed. Permission? I don't answer to you. I answer to the HOA. Before Jacob could respond, Cheryl's phone buzzed. She glanced down, then smiled thinly. Speaking of authority, you might want to keep things in line. I've already filed a complaint with the county about your illegal landscaping. This is your last warning. Jacob's blood boiled, but Marissa held him back. We're not backing down, she said firmly. But maybe you should reconsider how you handle your power. Cheryl's expression twisted. "I am the power here." The confrontation ended with no resolution, but tension hung heavy like a storm cloud. That night, a new horror awaited them. Jacob woke to a loud bang on the front door. He grabbed his phone and rushed downstairs. Outside lay their car tires, all four, slashed and flat. A plastic bag hung from the windshield wiper, containing a single note. "This is just the beginning." Marissa called the police. Officers arrived swiftly and examined the damage. While they took the report, Jacob reviewed the camera footage. The security feed captured the entire event. A hooded figure moving in the darkness, quick and careful but unmistakably familiar. Cheryl. The officers exchanged glances, uneasy. "We'll need to speak with her," one said quietly. Days passed, with no contact from the HOA board, but the neighborhood buzzed. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, casting wary glances at Cheryl's house. Then, late one night, a series of strange flashes caught Marissa's attention through the window. The porch lights across the street were blinking in a pattern. A rapid on-off rhythm. Marissa grabbed her laptop and quickly jotted down the pattern. A series of short and long flashes. "It's Morse code," she murmured. Decoding the message sent chills down her spine. "Call 911. Now." Saturday afternoon was supposed to be calm. Jacob was mowing the lawn under the harsh sun, the hum of the mower the only sound in their quiet cul-de-sac. Marissa stood on the porch, folding laundry, the weight of the past weeks pressing on both of them like a storm cloud. Across the street, Cheryl sat on her front steps, arms crossed, watching them with an intensity that made the hairs on Jacob's neck stand up. Every so often, she lifted her phone, fingers poised over the screen, her eyes darting toward their house. Then, without warning, Cheryl pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Marissa's heart sank. Jacob glanced up just as Marissa answered the phone. Inside their house, her headset already on from her shift. It was an automatic reflex. She had kept her dispatcher role secret, but tonight fate forced it into the open. What's your emergency?" Marissa's calm, practiced voice filled the room. On the other end, Cheryl's voice trembled, with frantic energy. "There's a man outside. Dangerous. I think he has a gun." Marissa's fingers tensed on the desk. She knew Jacob was just outside mowing. No weapon, no threat. But Cheryl's call was dripping with malice. "Ma'am, can you tell me your location?" Cheryl rattled off the Oak Hill Preserve address, then added, "He's acting erratic. I'm scared for my safety." Marissa kept her voice steady. "Sir, are you armed? What's your name?" Jacob's jaw clenched, and he stopped the mower, dropping it to the grass. "Sir." "I'm not armed," Jacob called out the door, voice calm but firm. "This is a false alarm." Cheryl's breath hitched, almost a sneer audible through the speaker. "You don't belong here. You're breaking the rules. I'm protecting this neighborhood." Marissa suppressed a sigh. She knew Cheryl's intentions were far from protecting anyone. This was a calculated attack, an attempt to escalate the harassment to a dangerous level. But Marissa had one advantage Cheryl couldn't know. She was on the inside. While continuing to calm Cheryl, Marissa sent a discreet alert to local officers, marking their address as potential HOA dispute. No weapons reported. The dispatcher's protocol forced Marissa to remain professional, but inside she was furious. Cheryl was weaponizing the 911 system against innocent people. Outside, Jacob waited, knowing that soon police sirens might pierce the quiet afternoon. Minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled into the cul-de-sac, lights flashing but no sirens blaring. Officers approached carefully, their eyes scanning the lawn and windows. Marissa stayed on the line, answering questions, redirecting the officers away from confrontation. Cheryl watched from her porch, a self-satisfied smile spreading across her face. But Marissa noticed something strange. The officers didn't rush to arrest Jacob or investigate him aggressively. Instead, they quietly left their patrol vehicles and moved toward Cheryl's house. One of the officers knocked on Cheryl's door. After a tense pause, she opened it, just enough to peer out. The officers exchanged looks and asked to come inside. Jacob watched from the window as the police disappeared into Cheryl's home. His pulse quickened. What were they doing in her house? Moments later, the officers emerged carrying a thick manila envelope and a box. Cheryl's face was pale, her composure cracked for the first time. The police handed Jacob a card with their contact information and said, "If you notice anything else, call us immediately." As the patrol cars pulled away, Marissa looked at Jacob, her voice low but resolute. "She didn't expect me to be on the line," she said, "and she definitely didn't expect the police to follow her inside." Jacob nodded slowly. "We're in deeper than we thought." The calm after the police left was only a fleeting illusion. Jacob and Marissa exchanged uneasy glances as the sun dipped below the horizon. Cheryl's house sat across the street, dark and silent, the weight of the day's events pressing heavily on both of them. But the night had other plans. Just as they prepared for bed, the shrill ring of their home phone shattered the silence. Jacob answered, his voice cautious. "Hello?" A cold, clipped voice whispered on the other end. "You're making a big mistake." The line went dead. Marissa grabbed the receiver, her eyes wide. "That was Cheryl." Jacob slammed the phone down, his mind racing. "She's not done," Marissa said, voice low but firm. "She's setting a trap." And she was right. That night, the wind rattled the windows and shadows crept along the walls as they tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. At 2:17 a.m., the sound of shattering glass echoed from the front porch. Jacob bolted out of bed, grabbing a flashlight and his phone. Outside, shards of their front window glittered on the porch. The door was slightly ajar. He called Marissa, and they moved carefully through the house, checking every room. Nothing else was disturbed, but the front door handle bore fresh fingerprints. Suddenly, a text message buzzed on Jacob's phone. "Stop digging, or next time, it won't be just glass." The sender ID was blocked. Marissa's voice was steady but resolute. "We have to go to the police now." Before they could move, their security system suddenly went offline. All the cameras blacked out simultaneously. "It's a blackout," Jacob whispered. Outside, a car engine roared to life and sped away down the street. Marissa quickly rebooted the system, but the feeds stayed dead. Jacob frowned. "She's gotten into our network." Frustrated and angry, Jacob and Marissa gathered their things and drove to the police station, hoping for backup and protection. But what awaited them was unexpected. At the station, the officer on duty sighed heavily and said, "We've had other complaints about this HOA president, but without concrete evidence, it's hard to act." Marissa slammed her fists on the desk. "We have video. We have threats. She's trespassed on our property." The officer nodded. "I understand. But HOA politics complicate things. These situations often drag on." Jacob exchanged a look with Marissa. The system was failing them. Later that night, back at home, the silence was broken by the piercing sound of their security alarm. They raced outside and found their mailbox ripped open, the contents scattered across the sidewalk. Among the debris was a small, weathered envelope. Jacob picked it up, heart pounding. Inside was an old photograph, a group of women standing outside the HOA office. Dated 15 years ago. In the center, unmistakably, was Cheryl. On the back, scribbled in shaky handwriting, "Some secrets never stay buried." Marissa swallowed hard. "This isn't just about us." Jacob nodded grimly. "It's about what Cheryl's been hiding all along." And as the cold wind swept through their yard, one chilling truth became clear. They were not just fighting a neighborhood bully. They were up against a dangerous secret that someone wanted buried at any cost. The photograph sat on the kitchen table, its edges curled and yellowed with age. Jacob and Marissa stared at the image, a faded snapshot of a group of women, all smiling stiffly for the camera outside a building marked Oak Hill HOA headquarters. At the center stood Cheryl Farnsworth, younger but unmistakably the same steely-eyed woman. Marissa traced a finger along Cheryl's outline. Who are they? And why does this look like a different world? Jacob's eyes narrowed. Look at the date. 15 years ago. That's before Cheryl moved here, before any of this started. They turned the photo over and re-examined the cryptic note. Some secrets never stay buried. Marissa pulled out her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as she searched for anything connected to Cheryl's past. Minutes later, a news article popped up. Scandal at Greenfield Estates HOA, embezzlement and cover-up. Marissa clicked the headline, her eyes scanning the words. According to the article, 15 years earlier, a scandal had rocked a neighboring community called Greenfield Estates, not far from Oak Hill Preserve. The HOA president had been accused of misappropriating funds, intimidating neighbors, and silencing dissenters. The woman at the center of the storm? Cheryl Farnsworth. Jacob exhaled slowly. This isn't just an overzealous HOA president. She's been running this kind of operation for years. Marissa nodded grimly. And she's been moving from neighborhood to neighborhood, covering her tracks, building her power. The article detailed how Cheryl had mysteriously vanished after the scandal, leaving behind lawsuits, angry homeowners, and a trail of broken lives. Jacob looked at Marissa. No wonder she's so vicious. She's protecting something much bigger than lawn rules. But what? That question gnawed at them both. Determined to dig deeper, they decided to visit the Greenfield Estates neighborhood the next day. As they drove through the quiet streets, they noticed something eerily familiar. Surveillance cameras on nearly every house, neighbors watching each other with wary eyes, and a thick layer of silence heavier than any community they'd known. At the local library, they found more articles, records of lawsuits, and community meetings where Cheryl's name appeared repeatedly, always surrounded by whispers of threats, blackmail, and intimidation. One particularly damning report detailed a missing persons case, a woman named Denise Harper, who had challenged Cheryl's authority and disappeared without a trace. Marissa's voice trembled as she read aloud. Denise Harper, last seen confronting the HOA board, case unsolved. Jacob slammed the book shut. This goes deeper than we thought. Driving back home, the tension in the car was suffocating. They returned to their neighborhood to find Cheryl's house dark, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. Marissa whispered, "We need to be careful. Whatever Cheryl's hiding, it's dangerous." Jacob nodded. "And we're in her crosshairs now." That night, as they prepared for bed, a sudden crash shattered the stillness. The bedroom window exploded inward, glass spraying across the floor. A shadowy figure slipped through the shards, silhouetted by the streetlight. Jacob lunged forward, grabbing the intruder, but the figure twisted and slipped free, fleeing into the night. Left behind on the floor was a small, bloodied envelope. Marissa picked it up, trembling. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed but smudged with dirt. "Leave, before you become the next Denise." The past wasn't just a story. It was a warning. The night after the break-in, Jacob and Marissa sat in their dimly lit living room, the bloodied note lying between them like a dark omen. The weight of Cheryl's threats pressed down harder than ever. Marissa's eyes were sharp but tired. "We can't run. We have to finish this." Jacob nodded. "But how? We're up against someone with power, resources, and a terrifying past." Marissa tapped her phone. "I still have contacts at the dispatch center. I can pull more records, see if there's any evidence Cheryl's been manipulating calls, threats, anything." They worked through the night, piecing together call logs, HOA complaints, and strange patterns of anonymous tips and false reports. Suddenly, Marissa froze. "Jacob, look at this." On the screen was a recording from a few months ago, a 911 call from Oak Hill Preserve. The caller was panicked, reporting a break-in at Cheryl's house. But the voice was unmistakably Cheryl's. What shocked them most wasn't the call itself. It was the conversation after, between Cheryl and the dispatcher. In the recording, Cheryl calmly instructed the dispatcher to send the police elsewhere. And then, in a chilling tone, she added, "Let them think the neighborhood's safe. No one can know what's really going on." Jacob's blood ran cold. She's been orchestrating the chaos all along, controlling which emergencies get attention, which don't. Marissa's voice dropped to a whisper. She's been manipulating the system to keep her secrets safe. Suddenly their phone rang, the caller ID blocked. Jacob answered cautiously. A voice, distorted but familiar, said, "You're closer than you think. But beware, not everyone on the police force is who they appear to be." The line went dead. Fear turned to resolve. The next morning, Jacob and Marissa headed to the local police precinct, this time with a plan. They wanted to confront Cheryl publicly, armed with their evidence. At the HOA meeting, the room buzzed with tension as neighbors filled the seats. Cheryl entered, poised and confident, unaware she was about to be exposed. Marissa stepped forward, voice steady but loud. "I have proof Cheryl Farnsworth has been abusing her power, fabricating emergencies, threatening neighbors, and covering up a history of harassment." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jacob held up his phone, playing the recording. Cheryl's face paled. But before anyone could react, the doors burst open. 2 uniformed officers entered, badges gleaming. One stepped forward. "Cheryl Farnsworth, you're under arrest for fraud, intimidation, and obstruction of justice." Whispers turned to stunned silence. Cheryl's composure cracked, eyes wild. As she was led away, she spat bitterly. "You have no idea what you've started." After the meeting, Jacob and Marissa stood outside, the weight of weeks lifting slowly. "We did it," Jacob said, pulling Marissa close. "But this isn't over," she warned. "There are others who won't want these secrets out." As they looked over their neighborhood, quiet now but forever changed, Marissa's phone buzzed with a new message. This is just the beginning. A chill ran down their spines, but together they were ready. The end, for now.